So welcome, Vamadeva. Today we plan to speak about Vedic counselling. And so, of course, if you have any questions for Vamadeva at any point, please let me know so that you can come and ask him individually, but we'll let you begin.
Yes, well, first of all, I was very happy to hear your chanting. It's done very well. And recognizing that these are devatas, cosmic powers, the pranas, the senses. In fact, there are presiding deities over each of the senses and a whole process there. What I just wanted to talk briefly a little bit more about was the Gayatri mantra. And Gayatri, of course, is a mantra from Rig Veda, the third mandala, and it comes from the Rishi Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra was more the famous as the Kshatriya, or the Rishi who was also a king, and who had a tremendous power of tapas. He could be overbearing at times, but he could also move into the transcendent and showed us that you do need to make a certain effort. And tapas is actually the first term of the second pada of the Yoga Sutras and relative to sadhana. And tapas is also the name of tapoloka, which is the loka next to the satya loka. And it is specifically connected to Agni. But Agni as the inner Agni, which is, of course, the power of tapas. In any aspect of life or nature, there needs to be a certain ripening factor, which requires heat, and it also requires dedication, concentration, which is all can be defined as tapas. And then tapas also relates to the Chit Shakti aspect. And relative to Agni, that tapas represents our basic motivation in life and what we are seeking, our aspiration. Sri Aurobindo often talked about the need for a higher aspiration. What are we aiming to do? What is our goal of life? What is our sankalpa or intention? Now, Savita, there's many names for the sun, covering various aspects. Savita governs all the transformative moments of the solar energy. Whenever the light is transformed, sunrise, noon, sunset. Sometimes he is looked upon as the night sun, or the sun that is hidden in darkness, which is the Atma Vidya, or the self-awareness hidden in the darkness of the mind and the unconscious. So with the Gayatri mantra, you are creating a perpetual self-awareness as part of it. And you're also attuning yourself to these cosmic cycles of transformation. Of course, Surya is Atma overall. And then Surya also is, Savita is also that ascending energy. And then Savitri is the feminine for that. We have Gayatri, Savitri, Saraswati, the Devi forms, which also relate to the meters or the chandas. And there's also Savitri has this ability to take us beyond death and ignorance. Sri Aurobindo wrote what is actually the longest blank poem in the English language, and even longer than Milton's Paradise Lost, and a lot more interesting to read because it is, of course, filled of yogic secrets and, of course, the connection with Savitri and the resurrection of Satya or truth. Now, Tat, of course, is also reflecting that Tat Sat. It's not just a there as, and of course, Tat is also the basis of the Tattva. Varanium represents the highest, the most aspired to, and the ascending aspect of the energy. And Bhargo or Bharga is actually Rudra because it is the heat and the light. And of course, that is also the tapas. Bhargo Devasya, of the divine power. Dhimahi, Di means we meditate. In fact, Di is also a Vedic name for Buddhi, and it's also the root of this term dhyana for meditation, which is also opening up to that inner and outer cosmic solar energy. Diyo na prachodayat. May that savita, may that energy of the solar self guide and direct our buddhi and our intelligence to a higher awareness. So I often have another modern orientation to its explanation. You know, we have all these, we're looking for all this sun power. We have all these ways of channeling solar energy outwardly with all the special equipment we have for drawing in the energy of the sun at an outer level. The Gayatri mantra draws in the energy of the spiritual sun at an inner level. So if you're at the level of the mind, you're lacking in awareness or light, or it's early in the morning, you want to focus. So that energization of the solar power of consciousness comes through the Gayatri mantra. And of course, at these transitional points, what we call sandhyas, sunrise, noon, and sunset, but also the equinoxes and solstices, and also the points of eclipses, we have this ability to move into a moment of potential transformation where you shift from one dimension to another. So that is one of the reasons why the Gayatri has become the most widely used Vedic mantra, now going for many thousands of years. And we even find it in some of the older yoga texts, like the Yoga Yajnavalkya. There are a number of other ancient yoga texts. The Yoga Sutras has become most popular, and there's many verses on yoga in the sun in various Vedic texts, like in Upanishads, like Shvetashvara. And it's said that yoga comes from the sun. Yoga is, Adi Guru is Ishwara, but Ishwara is also the solar power. And that is where the Om mantra also arises. So it's very important to tune from that. It's said that the letters of the aksharas of the Vedas come from the rays of the sun. So the sun is not just giving us prana, it's also giving wisdom. And we talk about in yoga, talking about the Purusha. But in the Vedic tradition, it's Aditya Purusha, the Purusha in the sun, or Hiranmaya Purusha, the golden light of the Purusha, which dwells in the Hridaya, or the spiritual heart. Hari Om.
Do you have any questions for Vamadeva this morning? No. Okay. So there are no questions. So we just love to hear your words on Vedic counselling, or
yes.
Yeah, this would be lovely.
Yes. Well, we have to understand that essentially teaching is counseling, and even therapy is a kind of counseling. But what are we counseling from? What are our ideas, our principles, the inner truth that we are coming from? And the first thing about yoga and factors like Vedic counseling is they take an integral approach, considering the entire human being. And of course, we then have the body, the prana, the senses, the mind, the higher koshas, we have our karmas, we have our samskaras. So looking at our life as a whole, we have outer life, inner life, world of nature, world of society. And in that regard, the Vedic teachings have various disciplines that are interrelated for this specific purpose. Ayurveda is mainly dealing with the body, but also the prana and the outer aspects of the mind. Yoga is actually meant for the purification of the mind and essentially creating sattva guna. Ayurveda is used for balancing the doshas. And then the Vedanta is used for the self-realization, and which is the higher goal, the going beyond the mind or going beyond the body and mind. And remember this because I had this discussion with the Shankaracharya of Kanchipuram, one of the, now they're quite older because we're also quite older, one of the main centers in India. And that was run by the Paramacharya, who passed away over the age of 100. And he was one of the main teachers there in the South. And that is why we have these integrated Vedic disciplines. So Vedic counseling can bring in the Ayurveda, the Jyotish, the Vastu. In fact, the Jyotish, of course, helps us understand our position in time, the temporal energies we are working with, which are, of course, karmic in nature. And Vastu helps us understand our position in space, but space being our place on the earth and the energies that are coming to us from the different directions. You'll notice the native traditions, like the Native Americans, have the 4 directions, the 4 winds, and they're aware of the forces that are coming there. So there is certain principles for building a house or orientation, certain rooms, meditation rooms more in the east or southeast directions and all of that. That's a science in its own right. Astrology helps you understand your karma. And Jyotish is very important for the Vedic counseling because Jyotish is the Vedic discipline that can address all aspects of life and behavior because it deals with dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And there are different ways of looking at the chart relative to these 4 different factors. And of course, Jyotish is based upon timing factors, the unfoldment of our karmas through the process of time. And it has very specific planetary periods, like dashas, we call them, where we can see the unfoldment of the karmas in our life. And it's not, sometimes people look at it in a very kind of fixed, predictive manner, that your life has been kind of totally patterned out, and all it's sort of like on an assembly line, and you're just going to be taken somewhere. That is a misunderstanding. Jyotish means light. It's the light of the inner eye. And so it's helping us understand what is behind that movement of time. We all have stages of life, and the different bhavas or houses in the Vedic chart will address different aspects of life, whether it's health, career, relationship, moksha, buddhi, education. So it helps us have a certain orientation. And of course, that then can be drawn into other questions. We may have questions about our finances or questions about our career, relationship, or moksha. It's very interesting. Usually when people come into a Jyotish reading, they ask all the questions. And then at the end, you ask, do you have any more questions? He says, yes, will I be liberated this life? not so simple. Of course, we'll all be liberated eventually. It'll be liberated in some way. So Jyotish has an important role there. Ayurveda is very important, not only for the physical well-being, but for the right behavioral aspects. And that's also, again, connecting to the sattva guna. And yoga is the basis of our sadhana. Life should be a sadhana. Life is always a sadhana in that we are making certain efforts to achieve certain things. Things are not just falling from the sky, at least not very often. And that means we need an intention, a motivation, whether it's relative to our career, associations, place in society, what we are doing for humanity, and also for our specific yogic path and yogic orientation. And Vedanta is necessary to understand the universe. Vedanta is what covers the 5 koshas. It covers all the pranas. It covers karmas. And it's very interesting because you have all these Vedantic principles, aham brahmasmi. It sounds very metaphysical. But if you actually study Vedantic text, it's rather different. On one level, for example, you have texts like the works of Shankara, like Viveka Chudamani. And what's it about? Controlling your anger, mastering your desires, going beyond fear, purifying the body and mind, raising the consciousness. It's all about tapas and self-discipline in order to get anywhere. It does outline the highest goal, but it also says, and what do we need? We need an aspiration. We need a longing, true longing for moksha. We have our other goals of life we certainly need, but moksha is the ultimate goal. So, and then the Vedanta also usually brings in some factor of devotion. It's interesting that in Shankara's works, he has the most hymns of devotion to the deities than any other teacher in history. And in India, you know, we have this, today there's a lot of popularity for the kirtan and the shorter chants. And sometimes some of the chants in North India, which tend to be a little more Hindi oriented. But in South India, they're still carrying on the stotra tradition, where you have all these important chants. For example, the Saundarya Lahari to Devi Tripura Sundari, or each deity has its chant. The Ganesh Panchakam for Ganesh. If each deity has these, they may be done relative to certain times of the years, but the importance of the devotion is always there. And complementary to devotion is compassion. And these two go together. Devotion is our aspiration towards the divine energies, and compassion is our recognition of the unity and interdependence of life. Buddhists sometimes looks like they're emphasizing compassion more, but actually compassion is one of the main factors, as is devotion. They also have their Buddhas and bodhisattvas, where they do all their chanting of the name and other type of these specific rituals. So life as a sadhana. So Vedic counseling is to help draw us into understanding the Vedic knowledge and integrating it into the different aspects of our lives. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to be proficient in each one, or at least we know their particular place, so we know when that particular guidance may be required and to what degree. Then the idea behind Vedic counseling is also, what is our view of the human being and who are we counseling? And that is why it's very important to have a certain rapport or they even say, Ramana says, heart-to-heart connection. Ramana said he used to teach in silence through a heart-to-heart connection. Not easy for us to do, but a certain level of rapport. And even compassion means you're recognizing the common issues in human life. Human life is very difficult. There's lots of illusion, there's lots of confusion. Physical reality is very dense. Social reality has a lot of compulsions and social control. There are various vested interests. Sometimes, as mere individuals, we think that, again, other forces are moving us, and to do something, we have to go against things. In fact, on the spiritual path or the yogic path, in the beginning, we often run into a certain amount of opposition, even from friends or family or society or social values. So the Vedic counseling is to help us enter into that pursuit of the Vedic knowledge and lifestyle. And it is addressing, again, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And of course, we have to understand our Swadharma, what is our karma, as an embodied Jivatma for this particular incarnation. There are certain karmas we come with, but there are also certain karmas that are ripening or coming into fruition. And what karmas are we connecting ourselves to by our association, by our work, by our environment? And what teachings are we bringing into our lives? So Vedic counseling is meant to be a foundation or doorway to that yoga sadhana and self-knowledge. It's not excluding other factors, but it's recognizing we must address our inner being for fundamental change. It's not just a question about changing the outer being, but we do have to change our outer behavior. And that is why Vedic counseling seems rather complex, because it's working on different dimensions. But at the same time, the main principle we have is generally to work from the outside to the inside. But at the same time, you have to have some inner connection in the process. And then understanding ourselves. We usually don't know about 5 koshas. We don't know about inner aspect of the senses. We don't understand karma, or we think things are imposed from the outside. And then Vedic counseling is meant to help guide people in changes in life. So we're not just giving advice, or we're not just telling them what to do. We're suggesting certain behavioral changes they may need to do, whether it's changing their diet, their exercise, their environment, or having more knowledge, understanding something of their astrology or their doshic constitution. And so when the patient or client comes back, we're recounting with them what changes they are, or activities, new activities they're bringing into their lives, and what have they experienced from that, and creating life as a sadhana. And that's only way we really learn is if we apply something and see what it does, rather than just theoretically accepting it. And the Vedic counseling then worshiping the divine and also connecting to our inner being, that in itself takes us beyond a lot of our psychological concerns that have been put upon us, or simply outer constraints. In other words, our Dharma is not just a vocation, it's also our spiritual purpose in life. So there needs to be that integral approach, and there also needs to be that patience, and also then the creating of another view of human life than what we're normally getting through simply outer concerns. Hari Om.
Any questions? No, no. Oh, no, go now.
Yeah. I've got the modern day affliction of difficulty with the tapas side of things. How do you increase your, I remember the word. But how do you increase your fortitude or I've got intentions, I've got lots of, but I don't have certainty as to where I'm headed. And a lot of uncertainty and things related to hard work that have tired me. So yeah, how do you sort of strengthen your resolve and your practice and your discipline? And
Yes.
I'm not even talking just
Yes.
yoga.
Well, we always start out with what we call a sankalpa, which is a motivation or intention. In fact, you have sankalpas on a daily level, a yearly level. What is our purpose and motivation? Say you want to be an artist, you have to have a certain motivation, certain sankalpa there. In a sadhana, each sadhana has a sankalpa. Someone could say, well, I've taken the sankalpa to do 1,000 repetitions of this mantra, or I've done a sankalpa, I'm going to go to this place of pilgrimage, sacred place, Himalayas or whatever. So our lives are based upon sankalpa, but they're also based on a desire. Now, the problem is desire usually comes from the outside. And of course, we have all kinds of propaganda and advertising to push us in various directions. And of course, the opinions of others. But we also need a long-term intention of what we are doing. And then we can also, you might say, measure our progress. And then there are certain teachings that come up there. Sometimes people ask the question, well, I've taken this intention and I fall from it after a short period of time. And my response is very simple. We all fall from it. The important thing is that every time you fall, you get up and go forward, not get caught up in the negativity from that. Life again has its particular obstacles overall. And in a lot of the yoga tradition, you have a certain sankalpa every morning. This day I intend to do this, or you start off with some sort of sankalpa or motivation relative to the deity. You call upon Shiva for the grace, or Devi, or whatever the Ishta Devata is to guide you through the day. So you're setting your mental and emotional forces in a certain line first thing in the morning, and then you reinforce that sankalpa through the day. I sometimes, when people ask about this, I tell them, they say, well, I get up in the morning, but I'm so busy, I have to do this, I have to do that. So I don't do my sankalpa until later in the morning or early in the afternoon. And it says, well, the train has already left the station. In other words, there's a certain directionality you can create first thing in the morning, which you can't create later on during the day. And even before you go to sleep at night, you reinforce the sankalpa with pranayama and mantra into the mind and into the state of sleep, dream, even a deep sleep. We always tell people to shut off the media or other concerns and move into that silent state. You don't need to take the world with you when you go to sleep. It will be there in the morning anyway, so you may as well relax. And the first thing in the morning, then like in the Brahma Muhurta, you can open up to the cosmic reality. Sure, we are on earth in our human world, we have our jobs, our families, these are part of a greater universe that we must honor first. That's why the Brahma Muhurta, which is the period about an hour, hour and a half before sunset, is important, because that is when our consciousness is at a receptive level in which we can insert higher knowledge, and in which we can connect with universal forces or devatas. So it's very important to understand and have a sankalpa. Anything, for example, if you have a relationship, you have sankalpas. Sankalpas are also connected to what are called samskaras. Samskara is sometimes translated as a sacrament. It's kind of like that. Everything we do should be made sacred. So there's certain chants before you start a class, like to Saraswati, Ganesha, the cosmic powers, before you eat food, before you travel, because you're trying to, again, harmonize with these higher forces rather than just simply being caught at a limited personal level. So we also need daily samskaras, and in that regard, and the samskaras are always connected to karma yoga. Now, if you look at a traditional text on karma yoga in Sanskrit, they're all about that. What chants, what rituals, what practices do you do at certain times and under certain circumstances? And here, karma yoga is the basis of all yoga, and ritual is often misunderstood. Ritual and karma yoga means an action done with awareness, but it is considering the forces of nature, seasonal rituals, stages of life, times of the day. So karma yoga is also an important part of that. And so we start off with the karma yoga. And of course, in India and otherwise, you have your temples, or you have your meditation rooms. These are also for creating the sacred space in your house. That also creates a foundation for the vastu and helps us with these influences coming to us at various levels, and creating sacred time. Sacred time is the time devoted to tapas or sadhana, and that can bring about fundamental changes in the mind and the karma. The main problem we have in life is most of the time we're distracted, impatient, or we're being influenced by something from the outside. So we need to also cultivate that inner motivation. And one of the things that's done with the sankalpa, it's made relative to the Agni, whether it is the ghee lamp or the candle or the flame of awareness in the spiritual heart. The Jivatma dwells there. That also carries your samskaras from previous lives and what you've intended to go through in this particular life. And so one of the most important parts of the Vedic counseling and Vedic living is becoming aware at the level of the Jivatma. Why was I born? What karmas did I bring with me? What karmic powers do I have? What I need to do to fulfill my karma. That's also what you need to do to fulfill your dharma. And what karma am I creating in what it is that I'm doing? And what other karmas am I connecting with our society or our environment? And so karma ritual is based upon a sankalpa. Life should be a ritual or a sacred action that doesn't need, we have to be overly pious or something. But you'll notice, for example, if you, in the temple, you have a process called prana pratishta, or bringing the prana into the murti or the form. And this requires the abhisheks, or the pouring of various substances over the murti, whether it's milk or ghee or various types of sacred substances. Even sometimes yogurt is used and sacred waters are used, like Ganga water, flower offerings with the 108 or 1,000 names of the deity a certain time of the day. So you're taking the form and spiritualizing it. Now that form in the temple is a murti, a sacred image. You may have a murti in your house, or you can also just consider that as your home, your life, or even your body, bringing the spiritual prana into the body, which is a higher level of aspiration and seeking connection to the immortal forces. For example, Shiva rules over the immortal prana. So we then learn how to work with the universe, not just work with, I mean, it's important to work with the forces around us, but there are, in fact, I like to tell people that we live in a user-friendly universe. But in order to get the universal help, you must ask. And you must ask with a certain amount of humility and dedication, and these higher forces will help you. Your Ishta Devata will help you if you call out for help with sincerity, and not if you say, well, I want you to get rid of my enemies and make more money for me. Sometimes that can be done, but it's a matter of calling upon the cosmic forces into our lives. And that's why, what happens? How often do we honor the sun in the morning? How often do we honor the moon? How often do we honor Mother Earth? How often do we honor Hanuman in the wind or the Vayu? So by recognizing and becoming mindfully and consciously aware of these forces, then they help us. Then we can connect to the divine prana within us, or the divine sun. Our inner self is said to be the sun. The resurrection of the sun out of darkness is the Atman out of the darkness of the mind and the ego. So then in the Vedic counseling, we also teach people how to work with these spiritual and natural forces, and also understand the nature of the forces that we are setting in motion. And this is where we have this problem with time. We stick our hand into a fire, you get burned immediately, so you don't stick your hand into the fire again. But if you eat wrong food, the effect may come out in several months. If you have wrong associations or other wrong activities, the karmic results may become and happen later. And then we forget. We forget that we've set in negative forces and they've reverberated upon us. We sometimes then feel we're victims, or why did this happen to me? We have to understand the forces we are setting in motion. And what happens is, in our society today, we don't know, or we're not taught, for example, the sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic forces we're setting in motion, or ones that may disturb the different doshas, and all this orientation we have in Vedic counseling. Hari Om.
She said thank you, just in case you can't hear. I have two questions, actually. One on behalf of someone in the room. Jennifer was asking about sleep, and often some very simple advice I often practice myself and would give to others is make sure that you can see the sunrise and the sunset and be, able to have that light coming to your eyes. And I wouldn't mind any other advice that you wanted to give. Jennifer, mind you, is a kapha type person. So in terms of, do you want to say hi? so her constitution wouldn't be great with huge amounts of oil massage and so on. Abhyanga.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, it is very important to be awake at the rising and the setting of the sun. Many of us are aware at the setting of the sun where you have the beautiful sunsets. We have extraordinarily beautiful sunsets in the mountains here, but also at sunrise, because again, whatever motivation you set at sunrise has the power of the sun. What you do later is just having your own particular power. And then, of course, this whole cycle, between sunset and sunrise is, of course, the night or the sleep. And of course, between sunrise and sunset is the day. The day is more for action. Of course, that is the Pingala Nadi. The night is more for turning within, or the Ida Nadi. And there are also different powers. For example, the day is more active, but the night can also be more meditative. We also encourage people to watch the rising of the moon, even the setting of the moon. But the moonrise is because the moon is also the mind, and it also connects us to various contemplative energies. And even looking at the stars at night, because that expands your awareness into the boundless, and it connects you with these cosmic energies. These stars are also different suns, and so they also have an atmic energy. We can make it more complex if you know the zodiac. Right now, I don't know what's happening in South America. So they have in the Southern Hemisphere, you actually have more beautiful stars, because you have in the Southern Hemisphere, you have brighter collections of stars and all the rest of it. Here in the summer, you can see the galactic center. That is an important point of alignment. And the different stars have their energies. These are used more from the astrological level. And then by connecting out, reclaiming your space at a level of the mind, that also helps us with meditative transformations. Another interesting thing that can be done is you go out before sunset, and you can either sit or you can even lay down and just gradually gaze at the sky until the stars come out, or even beyond that, because our sensory perception becomes more acute at night. In fact, I sometimes say there's no such thing as darkness or night, except maybe in a cave, or maybe in a forest, on a deep forest on a moonless night. But if you're familiar, there's all kinds of stars, planets, movement of the moon connect to the greater universe. That's also a way of healing your seeing. And it also increases your visual acuity, so that the power of perception for you is longer. You don't have to necessarily watch we look directly at the sun, because of course that light can be a little bit strong, but the night sky has that power in the morning, and you'll see the breaking of the dawn. Usha, the Devi who governs over the dawn, represents your spiritual aspiration in life. She guides you to the sun, or the Atma. There are famous hymns to the dawn, but that again is a spiritual dawn. So it's important to know how to connect with these time cycles, day, month, year, and so forth. And in the Indian system of the calendar, they have the most spiritual, the most complex, and the most astronomical calendar anywhere in the world. It's something called the Panchanga, which means 5 different limbs or aspects. So at every day, First of all, they begin the day at sunrise. They don't begin the day at midnight. Then at sunrise, they note the phase of the moon, which is called a tithi. These vary, and because the movement of the moon is a little more variable than that of other planets. And they also look at the nakshatra, or the constellation where the moon is located. And they look at also other connections with the sun, and also, of course, certain seasonal changes. So there, then you have a sacred calendar. Then you have days like Ganesh Chaturthi, or Shivaratri, or Navaratri. Devi gets 9 days. Diwali, there's 4 days. So you're making your life into a sacred time by following these movements of time, just as you're making where you live into a sacred space by various uses of incense or ghee lamps or murtis and various types of devotional worship. Now, there are, of course, doshic differences. Kapha people tend to sleep too much or to sleep later in the morning. So it's very important for them to, again, also arise before sunrise. And actually in the morning, then the energies and the body will clear. And it's also important before sleep to do some pranayama. There are also certain special teas, whether it's for strengthening meditation purposes like ashwagandha, or just opening purposes like Brahmis. There's sacred oils that can be used and so forth. And for Pitta people, we have to be careful because they like to stay up late at night. They can do that and meditate more, or go outside and look at the stars. Vata dosha people tend to be irregular, or they're easily disturbed. And that's also why certain mantras and of these meditation forms can also help us with our sleep pattern, because deep sleep gives us the ojas, which is the basis of physical and psychological immunity. So cultivation of ojas is always one of the key factors. I mentioned it quite a bit in my work. I have certain special articles about that we need to know how to connect with these factors as well. In fact, ojas is the basis of rejuvenation, or rasayana. And if you develop that, it's much more important than taking a sleeping pill or taking some form of just pharmaceutical medication. But connecting to that ojas requires the ability to be detached and let go. You have to let the world go in order to move into an inner state of peace. There are also Shanti mantras, or mantras to Shiva, etc. There are many approaches that can be done. And then before you sleep, then also have a summary of what you've experienced during the day, not necessarily judging yourself, but just taking the better essence of that and also drawing that within. Hari Om.
I suppose that leads me to another question. Often I've tried to encourage myself and other women to stay in contact with the moon cycle, or do moon bathing, or even sunbathing as well for short periods of time if the menstrual cycle is out of balance, so that there's actually physical light touching that region of the body for 10 minutes, sunlight, and then maybe moonlight as well. So moon bathing or sunbathing. Do you have any comments on that, or is it something?
Well, sunbathing, moon bathing, star bathing. But moon bathing is very important because the lunar energy is soothing and calming. It is more Devi oriented, whether it is Lakshmi or Saraswati or Parvati. Parva is a phase. So Parvati is a certain aspect of the moon. And there are sacred days. Lakshmi has her day, Saraswati has her time, and of course Navaratri is always connected to Parvati and all of that. And that lunar energy then also helps calm the prana. It also even the lunar energy will purify the mind. The solar energy, of course, has its own rejuvenative power. It can be too strong if we are exposed to it for too long. And of course, the moon has different phases. When the moon is full, it's also very bright to look at. When the moon is in the crescent moon, and being aware of the phase of the moon is also very important. And there are also deities relative to every phase of the moon, which are also forms of the Devi or the Shakti. And the lunar cycles are important. The planetary periods in the Jyotish are based upon the nakshatras and the phases of the moon. That's been one of my main aspects of my own study in the Jyotish field. I have a whole, actually, we also turned it into a video course of the Shaktis of the nakshatras. And then, different people are born under these different forces. So knowing the lunar, solar, planetary energies we have to deal with, there can be some complexities with different things, the Rahu, Ketu, Jupiter, Saturn. And also these planets have their time cycles, 12-year Jupiter cycles, 30-year Saturn cycles, 18.5-year Rahu, Ketu, and so forth. The ways of adjusting ourselves to this sacred time. The moon moves around the zodiac in 27 days. It's 30 days between one new moon or one full moon and another, but in the interim, the sun has also moved forward in the zodiac. So connection with the moon is also very important for calming the mind, and contemplative. The mind is the moon. From the moon, the mind is born. And the soma comes forth from the moon. Now, in the tantric yoga, we know everybody has learned a little bit about the chakras, right? But we also divide the chakras into the 3 khandas, or the 3 regions. The 3 lower chakras, Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, the realm of Agni or fire, also basis of Kundalini. Then the next 3 as we go, Manipura and the heart chakra, and also the throat chakra is said to be the region of Surya or the sun. And then the Sahasrar, the 1,000-petal lotus of the head, is said to be the region of the moon. Moon is the mind, moon is the brain. The brain has all these watery or secretions, like the watery connection of the moon. And then this becomes the basis of the Shri Vidya, or the Shri Chakra design. With the Shri Vidya, there's various mantras and practices and certain sadhanas that go with that. And these are also connected to certain mantras, like the famous Panchadashi mantra. And then they're connected to, again, raising the Kundalini energy from below and allowing the Amrit, the Soma, to come down from the region of the moon above. This is the Agni Soma form. And at the base of the spine, the Agni is also, in the Devi form, is this Tripura Bhairavi. And that's the more fierce or fiery form of the Devi. In the region of the Sahasrar, it's Tripura Sundari, or the blissful form of Devi. And the whole Shri Vidya is related to Tripura Sundari, as explained in various teachings, texts also, Lalita, Raja Rajeshwari, so forth. So we also then connect the devatas with these, and of course the moon, of course, with Devi or Shakti, and also change and transformation. And again, that softer form of energy. The devatas always have a soft form and a harsh form. Harsh form is called Rudra, and the soft form is called Saumya or Soma. Need to balance those out. So the cultivation of the Soma through the moon, the inner moon of the Sahasrara, is also very important. And then there's a certain place at the soft palate of the mouth, way in the back. That's said to be the place of Soma. It's said the Atma comes in to the body at the point at the top of the head. It then enters into the mind through the soft palate of the mouth, and then it takes its birth in the Hridaya or the spiritual heart. Hariom.
Yeah. I have another question that I hoped would encourage us along, but does anyone else have any questions?
One big question, but I don't have to ask.
Okay, I'll carry us on and then we'll go to Antonio. No. So this question is just about, and you've already spoken about it a little bit, but the different forms of meditation for the 3 doshic types. So Vata type people, what types of meditation should they be doing? Pitta type people, flower offerings, temple worship, and Kapha dosha. Yeah, this would be to the group, I feel, at the moment.
Yes. Well, we see, we have the 3 doshas, which are more physical and chronic. The doshic factors at the level of the mind psychologically are rajas and tamas. So we also have to consider doshas and gunas together. I'll give myself a little bit of credit historically, because I remember years ago, we were studying the 3 doshas, and then we were also studying the 3 gunas. And some of the older texts had this different ideas that one said Vata is rajas and Pitta is, I should say Vata is tamas and rajas is Pitta, and and Kapha is sattva. And the guy the teacher who was there, Indian doctor, I said, but you know, you're Vata dosha type, you're not tamas. So what I did is I created sattva, rajas, and tamas relative to each of the doshas. It's there in the literature, but it wasn't given much emphasis. So I've tried to emphasize that. And obviously, if you're at a tamasic state of any dosha, then there's going to be more disease-causing factors, inertia, blockages, toxicity, and so forth. So we are cultivating sattva guna in meditation. And in sattva guna, each dosha has certain positive attributes. For example, kapha dosha has more of devotion than the other doshas do. Pitta dosha has more of perception and discernment. And vata dosha has a certain degree of adaptability, movement, change, and so forth. So we also try to get them to move from tamas and rajasic aspects of the dosha into the more sattvic form, in the sense that you can't totally eliminate your birth dosha. And then, of course, we also have the individual factors to consider, again, like the Ishta Devata. Of course, Devatas are of different types. Again, Hanuman is the Lord of Vayu, so he can control all those particular issues. And then we also can consider opposite therapy. Vata dosha causes more fear. So if they worship Shiva, then factors related to that, get rid of the fear that is going on. And then we have different individual orientations as well. Let's go ahead.
So, sorry, I just wanted to understand that. So if Vata people are orientated towards more fear, then worshipping Shiva will eliminate that fear, is what you said?
Yes, it will help. And of course, Vata dosha people always need Shanti because they tend to be disturbed. But they also have certain powers of expansion, adaptability, like Hanuman, for example. Don't consider your dosha as necessarily a curse. It is just an energy form. Vata dosha creates vulnerability at certain mental levels. For example, today, Vata dosha people need to live in a chronically charged environment. And that means a calm, deep pranayama, not necessarily rapid pranayama. But what happens is we live in an electrified environment, and so we don't have proper prana. So they also have to consider connecting to the prana. Shiva is also Lord of prana at a certain level. So we have to understand how our dosha functions. A pitta person cannot not be pitta, but we have to understand that fire has a destructive effect. We also have to have fire as sankalpa, fire as mantra, fire as discernment and viveka. And kapha dosha sometimes is given people, it's made look bad. But actually, kapha dosha has those powers of devotion, trustworthiness, care. Consider maternal qualities are more from the kapha dosha's devotional qualities. But we always have our individual qualities and karmas as well. So there's not like just a standard procedure for everyone. So we have to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the doshas and also the deity forms that, for example, Lakshmi brings a lot of the positive kapha energy for those who, and Shrim is the main mantra of the moon. That's also why Shri Vidya, Hrim is the mantra of the sun. So we need to understand these forces and set them in motion. And we need to also look at our medical history and see what is we may be holding, and also then look into our behavioral practices. A lot of our modern behavior is disturbing Vata and Pitta because we're moving, changing, struggling. There's a lot of Rajoguna going on in our environment. And an interesting principle that I found that some people don't know is that too much Rajas leads to tamas.
Yeah,
How does that work?
Yeah.
You overwork, you over-exercise, you get overstimulated through your senses, too much noise, you get dulled out. So it's very interesting rule there that actually that's why our Rajasic environment and lifestyle creates more depression. Why? Because you're getting caught up in a stimuli is withdrawn, then you feel depressed because that energy isn't there. You always have that issue relative to drugs or whatever stimulation. You have to raise the amount that you're taking. So we have to understand the dynamics involved there as well. Kapha has a certain inertia, but it also has a certain resilience. And that's why Vata dosha, they're always talking about pro-kapha things, proper sleep, good nutrition, certain more herbs that are more holding those energies and so forth.
Wonderful, thank you. Antonia's got a big question.
You don't have to spend long on it because I think it's a little off topic, but on my sort of journey here also I soaked up a lot of tropical astrology, and I'm wondering, so I looked at my Vedic astrology chart and things shift somewhat. Do you find there's value in both, or how do I put that together?
Yes. The question is simple. It's the difference between the tropical astrology, which has been used more in the Western world, like your so-called sun sign, and the Vedic astrology, which is more, as it's called, sidereal, which means it's actually looking at the positions in the fixed stars. For example, we have this first, we have the vernal equinox, and then we have the beginning of the sign Aries. But as we all know, the vernal equinox is in Pisces, moving towards Aquarius. That's why some people were looking for the age of Aquarius. It's not actually in Aries at all. So that's a difference between how you measure the sky. Now, Vedic is looking at where the stars are located where the planets are located relative to the fixed stars. Whereas the tropical astrology is which of the seasonal realms are they in relative to, a 12-fold division starting from the vernal equinox, but not necessarily connected to the actual stars. For example, Jupiter is in Gemini now relative to the stars. And your birth time, your stars were actually located in a different place. There's about a 24-degree difference of places. Now, what happened was you have something called the sundial. And the sundial will show you the tropical where the sun is, but it doesn't show you, if you go out and look at the stars at night, that you see they are, and the planets at night, you'll see they're in different constellations than what is said relative to the tropical zodiac. That being said, I know a number of tropical astrologers, including some of the main ones years ago, and they have their own points of view. They also have, it's using different things, aspects in slightly different ways and different orientations. So I don't mean to criticize anyone, but it is measuring different things. The Vedic astrology is more complex because it has planetary periods. It uses divisional charts, not just the overall chart. You had the Drekana, or that's often used in the Western system as well, but various divisions of the sky. For example, we have something called a Navamsha, in which the sky is divided not into 12 parts, but into 108 parts, because 108 is also measuring sun, moon, and earth, moon distances. So I'm not going to go into the complexity there. I have a book called Astrology of the Seers, where I discussed also the relationship between those zodiacs. And the tropical zodiac is mainly looking at the sun, because it's based upon those solar cycles. The sidereal zodiac is more connected to the stars, and there are Western sidereal zodiac followers as well. And the ancient people looked at the stars, so they were basically the sidereal. The equinoxial points were known, but the other one was easier to see. We're actually having a conference on Vedic astrology from the 20th to the 25th of August in Sedona, but we also will be doing that online. I put that in my Facebook page recently. So we were discussing different things relative to that. But there are many systems. In China, they also have the I Ching, and they also have 28, 27 nakshatras. They don't have the same thing. So there are various forms of using omens, of using directional influences and other things. So I won't necessarily call them fortune telling. There are crystal balls. And if you have a good vision, you might see something in there that other people don't. But there are various forms of like that of determining the movement of time and karma. I was associated with an interesting person. His name, well, you wouldn't know, his name was Frank Noyce, but he was one of the main people at the Krishnamurti Foundation. in Ojai, and he had been from the very much in the Theosophical organization. In fact, he was one of the main people running the Krishnamurti Foundation there. And I discussed the tropical astrology with him. He also knew something of the Vedic, but we studied with the main Vedic astrologers in India, like Dr. Raman and K.N. Rao and so many others. But we always respect the individual, and different people have different levels of insight at various levels. Hari Om.
We have one more question. I'll let Tamul ask it. Yeah. So it's clear.
Frawley, I wanted to ask, what is the basic mantra or mandala to visualize before starting a daily meditation practice? To be safe, or just light, what kind of visualization? Because I am more of a visualizer.
Yes. Well, we have the three factors of mantra, yantra, tantra. In fact, tantra is also basically mantra and yantra. Now, the term mandala has also been used in the Buddhist system for certain yantras. And there are different yantras relative to different planets and also relative to different devatas. And there are also giant yantras like the Sri Vidya and the Sri Yantra that are used. So usually we do some focus on the yantra, because in fact yantra actually means a tool of movement and transformation, to also to geometrically structure the movement of the mind. And in that regard, the Sri Yantra is Mount Meru. It's Mount Kailas. It is the cosmic mountain. It is the mountain of the spine. So it's then, and then of course at different levels, different Shaktis, different Devis are worshipped. So the mantra of the yantra and the mantra of Ishtadevata are very important. And those are what is used. Now, generally too in meditation, we have these different forms. You have the dhyana murti, or you have a representational form that you meditate upon. Different deities have their different meditation forms. And that's, they say, we worshiped Lakshmi, and you talk about the different things that she carries, the color, the light, the so forth. Whereas the yantra represents the subtle body, the energy body of the deity. The mantra is also the name and the mind of the deity. And I also, personally, I put a lot of emphasis on the use of the forms, what we call also murti puja. Have I discussed that with you yesterday? I don't remember. I don't think so. Well, I'll tell you my thing about, because sometimes they criticize people in all these meditation traditions, whether Hindu or Buddhist or others, for using idols, right? Idol worship. You're not worshiping the form. It's like the ultimate form of art. You have great, beautiful sculpture. By meditating upon that, you're holding a certain attitude and a certain stillness to the mind. So you're not worshiping a form, you're using that as a type of concentration. And then you also have the process of the prana pratishta through mantras, yantras, flowers, pujas, for allowing the divine energy to come into that particular murti or form. And I have one form, it's in big meditation room, of Devi. I've had that there for 30 years. And it's interesting to note that every time you take a picture of it, she looks differently. Whether it is the light, whether it is the angle, or whether it is the sun, and they actually come to life. You actually also meditate upon them or do some chant for them in the morning or in the evening to connect with the cosmic form. There is the Shiva Nataraj, that's almost a yantra as well, because it has all the hands that he has, and then certain mantras that go along with it. So I have a statement I tell people: everybody practices idol worship. In fact, in the ancient world, idol actually meant something high. I said there's also idol worship, IDEAL. We have to aspire to our higher values. And then there's something else I call idol worship, IDYLL, which is worshiping nature. And then there's the idol worship that is the most popular and the most followed by everyone, that most people are doing all the time, which is called IDLE worship. So I always ask people to move from IDLE worship to actually worshiping a form and allowing that divine energy to come in not only to the form, but also into the environment around us. Hari Om.
I have one final question. If anyone else has one, let me know. So I'm just wanting your commentary on the different treatment branches in the Ayurvedic treatment of the mind. So Yukti, Sattva, and Deva, as a psychological form of treatment, moving towards Sattva Guna and then ultimately towards Deva worship.
Well, they're all connected together. They're actually all ways of making the whole thing. Now, yukti, it's very interesting. The term yukti also means reason. Mm-hmm. It also means bringing the mind into that rational state, not in the mundane sense, but discerning between the eternal and the transient, being and non-being, self and not self, using the mind in a constructive way, that way. Now, the problem is that a lot of us don't just simply use our reason. We rationalize. We actually just justify what we are doing. But there are various ways of using the mind. Now, we regard mantra as the best tool for healing the mind. The reason for that is that the mind is always dominated by its dominant thought, the thought that we have the most, which usually has an emotional connection as well. Look at the human mind. What are the main things going on in the mind? Worry, or anger, or conflict. What are your dominant thoughts? What is the thought that's most engaging me? Or did my team win the game? Or political thought. I'm not saying that these do not have a place, but your dominant thought determines the nature of the mind. And it's like this. Our minds are very distracted. Often we don't really have a strongly dominant thought. We have various distracted thoughts. I mean, we have our mass emotions like fear or panic, but we need to understand how the mind works. And one way is, I like to use the metaphor of water. Water has these stages of ice, liquidity, of course, and vapor. So the thoughts you do, the emotions you hold the most become like ice in your mind. It stays there. So that has to be melted by the fire of meditation or by the heat of awareness, and the quality of the mind then will change. And there's a very simple rule here, is that if you can make a mantra your dominant thought, it will change the nature of the mind. And the rule is very simple. If a thought becomes more than 50% of the mind, it will become 100%. You'll notice, look at how emotions affect you. When somebody is angry, the anger shuts down all the other mental activities. Someone's afraid, it shuts down the other mental activities. So you need to create that mantric mind. You can't have really meditation without it. And to do that, it needs the frequency, of course, of the repetition of the mantra, frequency, regularity, but also the proper energization That can be done with the prana and the pranayama. That can be done with the bhakti or the devotion. That can be done with the jnana or the pursuit of knowledge. Now, of course, there are many sattvic herbs. We talked a little bit, I think I mentioned Medhya rasayanas are very important. I've dealt with that in some of my other books. I also have a book on Soma and Yoga and Ayurveda where I discuss some of those things a little more complicated. And then, of course, you have to have a sattvic diet. Upanishads also say the mind is the essence of food. But we must understand the mind is not only the essence of the food and the beverages we take in through the mouth, the mind is the essence of the impressions, the food we take in through the senses. And that's why there are also sensory practices you can do. You meditate, you gaze at a flower. If you've been gazing at or you gaze at the sky. If you've been gazing at something disturbed or something limited throughout the day. So there are also various sensory therapies that can be done. And change of attitudes, and even change of our orientation. For example, sometimes it's good to stand on your head and look at the world upside down. It's good to change our perspective a bit, look at things from another side, make the mind flexible, read something new, do something, do a new mantra, study the life of a certain teacher or guru or some other thing, some story, that things, or connect to nature and to animals. They are also aware of many things that can be done, and adapting also at an individual level. And art is very important. You need creative expression because it is the shanti and the ananda that brings happiness to the mind. By the way, ananda comes from shanti. If you don't have shanti, you can't have ananda. So in that regard, creativity is important, whether it's pottery, whether it is working with colors, whether it is visualization, whether it's simply going out and looking at the colors and rasas of nature. Because again, I think we said that we have the outer world is name, form, and number. But the rasa, the behind it is the Satchitananda. You will find various forms of ananda hidden in nature. And even you can turn, you can offer up your negative emotions like into the Agni or the Hridaya fire. So then it can be transformed into a higher rasa. So we need to have that deeper level of perception as well. Hari Om.
I had one final question. I think I said the last one was the final. If anyone else would like to butt in, please. But I would like you to offer us something by perhaps describing how the use of mantra has affected your perception of the world or your experience of Maya or the illusory form in the universe. If it's possible, if you have something you'd like to share with us that's personal to you, that would be lovely.
Well, I'll say something a little broader. I've been studying Rig Veda and the original Sanskrit since 1970. And that connects us to the ancient rishis and the ancient world. You'll notice I've done a few books on ancient history and all of that. How many of you have seen the work of Graham Hancock, including this Ancient Apocalypse and so forth?
It's on Netflix. And
yeah,
he's
Netflix?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. I've just been in touch with him again. We're going to do some work on India later on in the year. There's a lot of misinterpretation relative to these factors. I did something with him on India 20 years ago. We still have that. He had another book, Flooded Kingdoms of the Ice Age. We have another video about that. But the mantra changes where you are in time and space. It's meant to connect you to the eternal and the infinite. Om is expanding into the infinite, and Hrim is holding us to the point of awareness in the heart. They also have their specific focuses going on. And what I have certain mantras, I've been used many mantras over the years and many stotras. I know them quite well. There's only a few meters that are used in the Sanskrit chanting, 6 or 8 of them. Like you go through something like Soundarya Lahari, it's 100 verses. Or there are other chants that way. And then there's the bija mantra. Then you see the mantras are different type. First mantra is a bija mantra, single syllable, like Om Hrim. We listed those as the Shakti mantras in our books, another name for them. Then name mantras, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Those increase the devotion more, and those bring about emotional changes. There are also many devotional chants as well. So that is another level of usage of the mantra. And then mantras also have what is called a meaning or a bhava. It is said that the sound of the mantra is the Shakti, and the meaning of the mantra is the Shiva. So even if you're doing a chant to the Devata, then the fruit of that chant is for the Devata to manifest in your life in some way, and to be able to call upon them. And some longer Aham Brahmasmi, these are Vedic mantras for carrying on degrees of knowledge. But mantra certainly works. It doesn't always have a predictable effect. And then you have the malas, you have Rudraksha, you have many different types, and energizing those over a certain period of time, that also energizes the whole mental field, the whole pranic field, and energizing the mantra with the pranayama. In fact, if you chant the mantra when you're holding the breath, it's going to have a stronger effect. You can also chant at different types of the mantras, and inhalation, retention, and then exhalation. There are certain ways of combining them there. And of course, in a sacred space or with the deity form. And then certain knowledge will come to you, or certain connections will come into your life. I would have to say one thing. I avoid academia. They generally don't like me, except in India. But we mantrically chant all the text. And that's how we learn what the deeper teachings are. Vedas are mantra. Rishi is a seer of the mantra. But mantra is not just a sound, it is the vibratory quality of the consciousness or awareness. So Om is Purusha, holds that particular energy. And of course, there are different mantras and so forth for the different devatas, and then they will manifest in certain ways. And you'll have more, I think Jung used the term synchronicity, many special kind of unusual events occur in your life. In fact, I'll tell you just one of those. I was a student of Ayurveda for a long time, but I had been living in California. But I had grown up in Colorado, and then I decided I would move to New Mexico. And I actually had a friend who stayed there. And so I moved to Santa Fe, and I was at a bookstore, and I said, I'm involved with Ayurveda and all these other things. He says, don't you know, there's an Ayurvedic Institute here in Santa Fe with Dr. Vasant Lat, and it ends up it's the only one in the country. And I met Lat. I knew him very well inwardly, and we shared many different things. So we had a kind of coincidental movement there. And he says, oh yeah, you'll teach one night, I'll teach the other two, or we'll study different things. We had a very similar background and so forth. So I've seen a lot of those coincidental connections and connections with gurus or teachers. Another one is that my main Ayurvedic teacher in India that I connected to, his name was Dr. Balavashta. He was actually a graduate of the first Ayurvedic school in Maharashtra in 1941, because the British had closed down the Ayurvedic in India. If you want to control a colony, you control their medicine. But he was also a major journalist in India. He had written books on Guru Gobind Singh, and he was also connected to Ramana. He was connected to a lot of major organizations in India. And I had just done my book on the Upanishads through the Aurobindo group. And then I come into contact with him, and he has connections with all the publishing groups or a lot of the Hindu groups in India. And so that was purely coincidental. I thought that just happened. But I've seen many of these coincidental things happening and connections arising for various reasons. Another thing you can do, I've tried, is that if you have a certain text, Upanishads, words of the Guru, Vedas, open up at random and choose a verse. The problem is you need to know a little bit about the verse involved, or the Sanskrit involved. And India is a good country because there you have a lot of these magical type of experiences, and there's a lot of groups that are connected. And one of our guru's friends we're connected to is this Swami Avdeshananda. He runs the Kumbh Mela, among other things, and he's the head of the Juna Akada. These are the orders of the sadhus. He has the largest one. He has about 2 million disciples, 2 million sadhus under him. But we've come into contact with a lot of other great teachers there. But there, it's not just a question of chance. It's also the question, or that is, of course, where they live and where they are in various sacred sites and temples. But life has all these issues, and if your inner eye is open, you will discover a lot of magic occurring, whether it's in the rising or the setting of the sun, whether it's the deer coming, whether it's Shivaratri, whatever. So it's just a question of cultivating that awareness of the inner universe and not just being caught up. Our human world, again, I hate to say it, we're not a very advanced species. We're like juveniles. We're sort of out of control at certain levels. So we need a lot of calm and patience. And some years, maybe some generations, we'll be a little wiser than we are. But there's always wise people among us. And we all have that potential. That yogic potential is there in us. And Sri Aurobindo always talks about the life as the evolution of consciousness, not just the evolution of bodies. He discussed some of that. And there are higher forces coming in that we can access. There are not only UFOs, there's devatas of all types that we can connect to. So, in any case, Adi.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to see you again. And yeah, thank you for all your incredible wisdom. It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just, whatever comes out, I don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice to talk to your group. If you can let me know. So I'm happy to discuss things with you. So, and to now I can say I've reached Australia. There was a fellow named Frank Ross years ago I knew who did a book called Ayurvedic Acupuncture. I don't know if he's still around, but
yeah, I'll have a look. Vedic Acupuncture, Frank Ross. Okay, thank you. Have a lovely sleep, a wonderful evening. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om.